calling all behavior nerds like me. I hope you'll join me for my favorite weekend of the year, the 2026 Dog Behavior Conference. Registration is now open at dogbehaviorconference.com, and the virtual live conference takes place from April the 17th to the 19th. Your registration will give you access to all 3 days of the conference online, as well as the ability to replay all the presentations and live Q&As from the conference for up to 1 year. Reserve your seat today at dogbehaviorconference.com. That's dogbehaviorconference.com, and I'll see you there. And now, on to the podcast.
The work that my next guest does goes straight to my heart because I am a lover of senior dogs. Her name is Helen St. Pierre. She runs a New Hampshire-based nonprofit sanctuary called Old Dogs Go to Helen, I love that name. And it is dedicated to providing a loving home, medical care, and hospice for senior and special needs dogs. The organization focuses on ensuring elderly dogs live out their final days in comfort and dignity. I'm so glad that you have the time to speak to us today, Helen, and welcome to the Positively podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You know, when I used to do these, I used to have my podcast recordings set up in the old dog space, but it was impossible because all you could hear were these little old dogs hacking in the background all the time. And people would be like, what's going on back there? I'm like, no, everyone's fine. So now I go to my bedroom bunker to do these. So you don't have to listen to old dogs, breathing around all the time.
And old dog breathing could be quite loud. The snoring could be quite loud as well. When they're sleeping. Okay. So look, you run this sanctuary, you have a family, you run this sanctuary, and I would love to know your story and how you started doing this.
Yes, because you don't wake up one day and go, I think I'll focus on death. And that's what I'll be teaching and talking about all the time.
Yeah.
But the way that I started was, my bread and butter, my career is my business, which is dog training and behavior consulting, I have my own training facility and business called No Monkey Business Dog Training here in Concord, New Hampshire. When I first started as a dog trainer over 20 years ago, I actually started my first ever real work with dogs was at a very, very poor, high kill shelter in Colorado, in an area where like cows outnumber people. We're talking ranch country, that type of thing. And it was a municipal shelter where animal control ran out of it. And we also did public health care, like spays and neuters. We also did public euthanasias. We had a crematorium on site, and we euthanized our dogs for space, not just, we're really talking that very old school. And that was how I began my animal career, which was difficult, but it sort of started my trajectory because what we found when I was in there for years was we would get dogs brought in by animal control, and we had a run of 5 kennels where the dogs that would come in a lot of times off of the reservation or stray dogs that were from ranchers. We had 5 kennels. If our kennels in the back were full, we would have to go through the kennels in the back and choose which 5 dogs we would euthanize that day to make room for the 5 dogs that would come in. Okay. And we don't like talking about this, but this still happens today.
Oh, it still happens. It happens every week at our local shelters here.
Exactly. So what happened obviously was that we had to pick the dogs that were the least adoptable, the either behaviorally compromised, medically compromised, all of those things. And so I did that for 3 years. And I went from like the lowly kennel tech that was just scooping the poop and cleaning up to kennel supervisor, up to manager. And then I was euthanasia certified. So I was actually doing the euthanasias.
Oh,
and
man.
If you start your career in that way, it will do a couple of things. But for what it did for me was it made it so that my work in shelter and rescue became something that I revolved around. Even though I was doing training for the public, I spent and still spend a lot of time in shelters and rescues, volunteering, training staff, assessing dogs, all free of charge. It was like, I've got to give back what I had to take. And initially, I started with young dogs, the dogs that we all tend to focus on as trainers, the dogs with behavior problems and all of that. And then when my senior dog passed at 15, my very first ever dog passed at 15, I really missed having a senior dog presence in my home. There's something about a senior dog in the home that just sort of, especially with the social facilitation with other young dogs, they sort of set the tone like, no, we're resting now
Yes.
for the other
Ease
dog.
up.
Right, please just lay down. Um, and so I messaged the shelter and I said, listen, the next time you get an old dog in that, just needs a soft landing, just let me know. And of course, 15 hours later, they're like, hey, Helen, we got one. And I took this little dog in who was extremely emaciated and needed a rebuild. And he was in kidney failure. And I had him for about 6 months. He passed away. It was awful. But of course, I was like, all right, let's do it again. And then let's do it again. And I started taking on these dogs. And of course, I already had a public persona locally because I was a trainer. So I was sort of advertising what I was doing and showing people, look, I'm taking in these old dogs. And once people know that there's a crazy lady that takes in the stinkiest, oldest, medically compromised dogs, your phone starts to ring a lot. And I would take in one and then I had two. And then, I would take was a giant mastiff, guy that was bald and had all these issues. And my husband said, I'm trying to lift this dog upstairs. Could we get a small one next? And I said, oh yeah, sure. And then I got another. And then I started with senior St. Bernards. And it
Oh,
basically just,
good grief. A
and then it
mastiff to a
just,
St. Bernard. Wow.
so what ended up happening was the community wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to help contribute. Once I started, I was very actively telling and explaining to people the costs. This is what it costs to keep senior dogs healthy at this age. And this is what end of life looks like and these kinds of things. And when the community started to want to help, I had a wonderful attorney reach out and said, we're going to make you a 501c3. We're going to do this whole thing. And Old Dogs Go to Helen was born. And when about 4 years ago, I said, I need more space because they were sort of just starting to take up my living room. I mean, it was just sort of like stepping over small dogs. And I have young children. So there was a lot of incontinence going on. And I was like, we need a space that we can designate. We found this home, which is on 20 acres, which has its own designated old dog space. But now we do senior and hospice for livestock. We have senior and hospice goats and pigs
Mm.
and horses. We have senior guinea pigs. I mean, basically, senior parrots. If it's old and it needs a soft landing and towards the end of its life, it comes here. I haven't gotten a giraffe yet, but we'll see. So that's kind of the story. And I still do all my training, but the senior dogs and the hospice work is it keeps me in line in my perspective and what I'm doing.
Wow.
It's a
Wow.
lot.
Okay. All right. So you have these senior dogs, these other animals on your property. And I'm thinking this right now, and I'm sure the listeners are too, of like, how exhausting is that for you? But also, isn't that emotionally overwhelming because these animals are sort of towards the end of their life and it is end of life care, really?
Mhm.
And so you're seeing a lot of death a lot of the time.
Yes. So hospice work is just like in human hospice work. We are very often a revolving door. We have dogs that come in that have maybe a week or a month. Our average stay is around 3 to 5 months, although that can totally vary based on the condition that the dog comes in. And then I always tell people when they bring us a dog, like, do not tell me that this dog is going to be fine and has a lot of life left in him, because that will mean that in 2 days he'll crash. It's like, you don't jinx it. You don't say anything. And yes, it's very emotionally taxing, but in my work in euthanasia, and I'm an end of life pet doula and a certified euthanasia, peaceful euthanasia pet professional, I know that the fulfilling side of knowing these animals have had a good end of life experience and a good quality of death. In the research that we have on euthanasia and on grief shows that the better the quality of death goes for both the caregiver and the animal, the more likely you are to choose it again, euthanasia specifically. And that's a great example of what we do here. Because they get a good end of life, it doesn't mean that it's not emotionally taxing, but it's very fulfilling because I know what the alternative is otherwise. Those of us that know what it looks like when you have a senior 15, 16-year-old dog medically compromised in a shelter that doesn't get companionship, that doesn't get the same one-on-one attention. I know what the alternative is. So my husband and I have said, like, we sacrifice the emotional toll to know that we're giving these animals what they really deserve and need. And listen, dogs have put a roof over my head for over 20 years in terms of training and all of that, and literally paying for the house that I'm in. So this is my way of paying back to them and giving them that.
Do you get, hard question, I know, but do you get a little desensitized to it?
That's a great question. No, I'm just better at being rational about it. If I got desensitized to it and it didn't affect me, then I would say that I shouldn't be doing it anymore. I'm just much more able to, um, make decisions because I've become so attuned to watching end of life care and being a part of it. Are there some that I connect with more than others? Are like in hospice care, like you'll ask this with hospice nurses, and they will absolutely say there are some patients that I really connected with, and others that I didn't connect with, but I'm still absolutely there to help them pass peacefully. So you're not necessarily desensitized to it, but you're more familiar with the process, so it's not as scary or as jarring. I know what loss is. I call myself a grief lasagna. Um, it affects me, but I'm it's like a rubber band that you're able to stretch and move through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Absolutely. So, okay, for people who don't know what a death doula is,
Yes.
what is that?
Well, an end of life pet doula is the same thing as a beginning of life doula for a female who is about to give birth. Doula is basically an assistant who isn't offering medical advice or like your veterinarian or anything like that, but is there to assist you through the emotional process, through the decision making process, and offer support and perspective that might ease the difficulty and staying completely neutral and objective. I will say to people who call me for end of life consults, you can be as emotional as like if this is your animal, you love them. I'm going to stay as rational and objective to help you, because if we're both crying and emotional, it might not help you. You really need someone that can say to you, well, let's look at these lenses of quality of life and talk through it. So a doula really can help people feel that they have support in those decisions through end of life, and an understanding of also what the physiological process of death looks like, because we don't talk about that at all.
No.
We only ever really talk about death when we experience it. And unfortunately, that's a really big missing piece that I see, is that we aren't talked about disease trajectories or the process of death. And so if you've never experienced it, or you only experience it every 10 to 15 years with your animals, you are going to feel very unprepared.
Are you overwhelmed by the world of professional dog training? We get it. There are so many different voices competing for the hearts and minds of people like you who just want the best for dogs and the people who love them. The good news is we're living in a golden age of understanding about not just how dogs think, feel, and learn, but also the importance of exploring and respecting the life experience and overall wellness of these amazing animals. But it can be tough keeping up with and making sense of all the labels: force-free, balanced, positive. And even when you identify the type of training that resonates naturally with you, people are telling you that positive training alone isn't enough. At VSA, we understand how hard it can be to navigate this world. And we're also at the forefront of rethinking what it means to be a professional in the pet industry working with dog behavior. And spoiler alert, it's about much more than just teaching dogs to do or stop doing something. So we'll make it simple. If you're looking to cut through the noise and focus on building or nurturing a career dedicated to serving the best interests of dogs and the people who love them, come talk to us at the Victoria Stilwell Academy. We have live and online courses designed for people at every step of their professional dog training journey, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Visit us when you're ready at vsdta.com. Once again, that's vsdta.com. We're here to support you no matter your background, and we'd be honored to share your journey with you. And now, back to the podcast.
So let's say, okay, somebody reaches out to you and says, I want you to help with my dog. I'm going to hire you to help with my dog. What does that process look like? Is that in person? Is it online? Because I know you have courses that help people do this, but what actually do you do with them? You're not there at the euthanasia, are you?
No, I mean, I have been for certain clients that are local. Absolutely. I will go with them to the euthanasia. But I will, usually it starts with a phone conversation. Sometimes we'll Zoom, but really it's a phone conversation. And a lot of times prior to that, they've given me a brief history in an email. This is what's going on. I really need you to help guide me. Is this the right decision to make? All of that. And then we will have a conversation. And that's where I walk them through the lenses that I look through in assessing quality of life for my three lenses, which is, function, purpose, and joy. And we talk about how are we looking at those? And let's talk about what your dog's daily life looks like. Or I've done this for horses or other animals too. What are we looking at? And a lot of the time, to be honest with you, I will say to them, by reaching out to me, you already know. You know you're at that point. You just need someone to tell you that it's okay. And I think the hardest part for a lot of people is as we become more familiar with death and as we're getting to that period, the hardest part is knowing when it's time. What's the right time? I don't want to do it too late.
Yep.
I don't want to do it too early. And some people really need that permission of saying it's okay to let them go before a catastrophe. And my phrase that I use all the time is on their last best day. So let's plan what that looks like. Let's not just talk about quality of life, but let's talk about what you want their death to look like. Because none of us humans, none of us are getting out of this. Why nobody sits with me at lunch, because I'm always like, we're all going to die one day.
Right. Unfortunately, yes.
But at the same time, we can't plan it. We can't, I can't say to you, so when you die, what do you want it to look like? But we could say, what are things that you don't want? You almost everybody would say, I don't want to be in a ton of pain. I don't want it to be traumatic. I would really like to be able to maybe say goodbye, maybe not on the day of, but know this. And we can give that to our animals. We can give them that experience. We can give them joy the day of. I mean, if I could plan my end, I would want to go for a walk on the beach. I'd want to eat a giant cheeseburger and have a big slice of chocolate cake, say what I needed to say to my loved ones, and go to sleep peacefully. Like we can do that for our animals. And that's what I'm really coaching people through, if that makes sense, like
Yes.
helping them come to terms with that and giving them that sort of permission. And sometimes, honestly, it's them needing to know, what do I say to the vet? If I have a vet who keeps throwing interventions at me, how do I tell them that I don't want to continue that and I want to focus on quality of life? And those are those other conversations. So it's very varied.
Yeah, those conversations are hard ones to have. And so, I feel like with my Sadie and Bella, I feel like it was the right time. And we had a vet come to the home with Sadie, and if a death was beautiful, that was beautiful. She was surrounded by her family, and Jasmine, who is my Chihuahua, and we were just with her and holding her as she slipped away. As hard as that was, I would say
That's
that's a
beautiful.
good, beautiful death, right?
Yes.
And she was also having loads of hamburger and everything beforehand. And the woman who found her and brought her to me when I adopted her, she was there, and Sadie was like, "Oh my gosh, all my people were here." But
Yes.
it was time. Bella was a little different. We had to take her to the vet, and it was a different experience. But I have to say, the experience with Jasmine, and all my dogs were old. Sadie was
Right.
16, Bella was 16, and Jasmine was 15. But with Jasmine, who the other dogs were my heart dogs, but this dog was my heart dog. And so I knew it. I knew it was time. But I kept questioning myself. And in the morning, we were like, we have to. It has got to happen today. So we had obviously this vet that was going to come to the house, standing by, and she came, and Jasmine had a bad morning, and the vet arrived around 1 p.m. And I remember getting up. We'd snuggled with her in the morning on the bed, and then I got up, put some clothes on, and from having a difficult morning with her, then snuggling. Then just before the vet arrives, she's all
She
excited.
rallied. Yes.
And I'm like, this morning, I thought you were literally gonna die.
Yes.
And now
They love to do that.
you're springing around. And I was like, we got to cancel the vet. And the springing around didn't last for very long. But then when the vet came, I was like, oh my God, I'm killing my
Yes.
dog. I can't do this to her. But I knew it was the right thing for her to do. And I wouldn't say for her, even though she was out of it, she didn't know what was happening, that it was a beautiful death for her. And so I have been struggling with that of like, I let my dog down.
No.
Did I wait too long? Yeah, maybe. But then I didn't wait long enough. Then was this the right vet to come to my house? Because she was matter of fact, she was good matter of fact, she got the job done, but it was a bit harrowing at the end.
Mhm.
And so I still now am like, and I mean, this happened, 6 months ago now, which I can't believe, but I still now am like guilty of like, I don't think that I gave her the best kind of send off that I could have done. Did I make the right decision? It's really, I know in my heart of hearts I did. It was time. But I still felt like, am I killing my dog? Right? It was the
Right. And that's
weirdest feeling that I hadn't had with my other two. Because
yeah.
I didn't want to let her go,
Yes.
even though she
And
needed to.
when you walk into the hospice, when you go in to see the oldies, if and you're more than welcome to come visit, please, anytime.
Thank
Just
you. Oh,
don't
I
wear
will.
anything that you care. Don't wear anything you care about. But when you walk in, you're dealing with dog. No one walks in and goes, "Wow, these dogs are dying." You don't. That's if if you walked in and you were watching dogs actively dying, that's not my job. So, and that's part of what we have to understand, and it helps bring clarity when you're dealing with the type of emotions that you're going through, and what do the stages of death look like, right? Because stage one of dying is that period that we are all very familiar of seeing with our senior dogs, where they just slow down, right? Where they're still capable of doing things, but they're not doing things to the same extent with the same level of stamina. And then the second stage, known as transitioning, is where you really start to see, and it's not black and white, it's like a gradient, right? And the second stage, transitioning, is where you will see not just that slowing down, but exactly what you're describing in that morning, where you have that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, it's time, right? Where there's this period where like, I don't know, we might be verging on catastrophic, where the dog might be crashing, but they often rally from that, right? They come back up from that sometimes. And we see that with the oldies. But as soon as I see stage two and transitioning start to happen, I start planning the end. I don't wait for them to get to active dying, which is stage three, right? Because what you're doing when you make that decision in transition is you're letting them go when they are still able to be present with you.
Yeah.
What we have to remember all the time, and I have lots of consults with people who I haven't even helped with the dog passing, but they need to talk about it afterwards. You're not escaping death. We're not going to get out of it. There's no morning that you would wake up and she would have been like, actually, I'm fine again. I'm 6 years old and I'm, you know, we're not going to get out of it. When we're in that gradient of transitioning into active passing, wherever you make that decision, all you're doing in there is alleviating potential suffering. So you did the right thing. And with some people that wait too long, the biggest regret they have is saying, I wish I had done it when they still were bouncing around and jumping. Our hospice dogs walk into their appointments.
Mm.
They go for a walk on their last day. They play ball. They eat their favorite snacks. I mean, obviously it still happens where they'll be crashing and there's emergencies that we don't foresee coming. But those emergencies, catastrophes are the ones that continue to reinforce to me that that's what I want to avoid. I
Right.
don't want those deaths. I want the deaths where I can see you're telling me you're almost ready. Let's make this decision now before it's too late.
Have you discovered positively.com yet? When you create a free Positively account, you can enroll in powerful and accessible online dog training courses to help you and your dog live your best life together. Join the supportive and inclusive community dedicated to supercharging your relationship with your dog at positively.com today. That's positively.com. And now, back to the podcast.
Okay, so then this next question, which I'm sure you get asked all the time, what signs are there that you need to start making a decision? What are the
Great question.
classic signs?
So first off, you have to think about disease trajectories, which is something that, unfortunately, in the vet medical practice is not talked about enough. Which it's not veterinarians' fault. They have such a short period of time to have discussions, and then they sort of like, all right, here's what you do and go. But when a dog, as a senior dog, is diagnosed with a metabolic disorder like renal failure or liver disease, or even something like heart failure, their disease trajectory, their passing, and what their phases of dying will look like might look very different from a dog that's been diagnosed with cancer and that disease trajectory. So there's three main ones. There's cancer, there's metabolic, and then there's just overall senior decline, which kind of goes in with orthopedic issues, cognitive decline. You know those dogs that are just really, really, really old. There's nothing actively wrong with them, but they're just in that downward slope. So understanding disease trajectories is important. We don't have to go into those in full detail today, but what I do look at, the three things that I'm constantly measuring, no matter what their disease or what we're dealing with, is the three things of function, purpose, and joy. Do you want me to go into those and how I measure that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So function is the one that we tend to watch for the most, and that is just physical function. I can't tell you how many people will say to me, oh, but he's fine because he's still eating.
Oh, yeah, I've
Or
heard that one. Oh, my gosh. And I
all the
said that
time.
myself. Oh, still eating. Sadie was still
Right.
eating.
Yes. So physical function we tend to look at as the first indicator of being fine. And if you think about the body and, the systems in the body, whether we're dealing with an animal or our own bodies, is we have multiple systems that have to be working copacetically in order to keep us at a running around 99% physical function. Our respiratory system, our circulatory system, our digestive system, all of those things. But I don't look at whether animals had good physical function as a way of determining if they ever having a good life. Like if you said to me, Helen, how was your day? And I said, well, it was great. I got up from bed. I was able to walk to the bathroom and go to the bathroom. I was able to eat. And I was able to move, and then I went to bed and I was able to sleep. You would be like, great. So you were able to like physically function, but that doesn't determine necessarily a good
Mm.
quality of life, right?
Yep.
And unfortunately, that tends to be the lens that we are always focusing on when we're reading quality of life. So function is important, but it's not the single thing that I'm looking at. The next thing that I'm looking at is purpose. And purpose with dogs is the same with purpose with any animal. It can definitely be genetically driven if we look at certain breeds, what their purposes were for. But purpose is what makes us get up every day and fulfill something in us. So you could say for you and I, this is fulfilling our purpose, right? But for a dog, it might be chasing the squirrels off the bird feeders every day from the slider window. And for senior dogs, it might still be that they love to go for a walk or dig a hole in the yard or, chase the cat off the sofa when they're, whatever it is. It could be minimized, and purpose can lessen as a dog gets older or their disease interrupts. But they should still have it. They should still have that. What fulfills me as an animal each day? Um, and then separately to that is joy. And joy does not have to fulfill purpose. Purpose can bring joy. And joy can be found in purpose, but it can be completely different as well. So, like an example of joy for me, and you can think about what would bring you joy, is I love when it's not New Hampshire winter out, sitting out in my yard with the sun on my face, watching the clouds. It fulfills no purpose in me, but it brings me immense joy. For old dogs, we tend to see a lot of sunbathing. That's joy for them.
My dog,
Roll,
Chihuahua. I mean,
yes,
being a Chihuahua, yes, sunbathing was everything for
yes,
Jasmine. Yeah.
yes, sunbathing or like finding a squeaky toy and just sitting and squeaking it right in your face. Like they just whatever in mischief, whatever brings them joy. And so senior dogs, we tend to go, well, he's older now. He's still getting up and he's still eating. But how are they living? Are they still having that
Mm.
purpose and joy? I myself know for a fact that when I get to if I'm lucky enough to get to an old age, if I'm not able to have some form of purpose or have joy, my quality of life will be extremely depleted. And we do see this in people, right? Where they are literally just existing, where we see this in senior dogs, where they get up, they go to the bathroom, they go back to their bed. And some of that can be that we're not talking enough, which I try very hard to talk about with people and in the industry about giving our senior dogs better quality of life, because we tend to be like, oh, well, they're old now. They don't need that purpose and joy in the same way that our 4 or 5-year-old dog, that if we don't give them that, is going to shred our, sofa. But if they're just existing and we're only focusing on function, that to me is not a good quality of life. So I'm looking at all three of those things. If I have the senior dogs in my hospice and I'm looking at them, and not just seniors, if I deal with puppies, we have puppy hospice and all of these dogs, if they're not able to fulfill purpose, or their function becomes so impeded, they're so orthopedically declining, or they've lost their cognitive ability to even have purpose, and they're just walking in circles and they have no joy. That's not a quality of life.
Mm.
So they all have to be lining up, and purpose is usually the first one to fall off the map. Usually with senior dogs, you'll see them, they're a little too tired to chase the squirrels off. They might perk their head up and go, I see you, I'll get you next time. And they go back to laying in the sun. But if they can still have joy, I'm okay with that, even though that tends to be for a short period of time. And that's what I'm talking about, like that transitioning phase. But as soon as joy is gone and we're simply looking at function, that to me is not a quality of life. I want to make it so that the dog is able to have function. They're able to walk into their appointments most times. They're able to experience joy, and they're still cognitively aware enough where I take purpose and I turn it to presence. They're able to be present with me for a good quality of death. Does that make sense? I know I like,
It does.
okay.
It makes perfect sense.
Yes.
I have to take a quick break, but when we come
Yes.
back, I'd like to talk about the euthanasia process.
Sure.
Okay, we'll be back. I'm back with Helen St. Pierre. This is just such an important conversation to have. The euthanasia process for people who have never experienced it. Is there such thing as a good death versus a bad euthanasia? I mean, like what? My grandmother used to say she was she bred beagles and she was a huge dog lover. It's the person I think that influenced me the most when it comes to dogs, but she was like, "Oh, just let me have a good euthanasia," she'd said, with regards to herself, because she was very much focused on giving her dogs a good death when the time came.
Yes.
What is it? What does it look like? What do you need to know?
Well, the first one is that you want to have a conversation with your vet ahead of time. So ideally, if you've got a good relationship with your vet, you understand or know what their protocol looks like. Because there are different protocols that different vets will use. Some vets prefer to place a catheter, an IV catheter in the dog. And in some cases, that protocol will be if you go into the vet hospital with your dog to say goodbye, they will take the dog away from you to place the IV catheter, which can be extremely distressing for both the dog and the
That's what
caregiver.
happened with Bella.
Yes. And that
Hated that.
exactly, and that to me is you wanna know that ahead of time, and you can even ask to say, "I do not want to be separated. I will hold the dog while you place the catheter," or can we avoid that process? Which again goes into when you try to talk about quality of death and avoiding catastrophes, if you have a dog that is crashing medically and they have to rush it into the back at emergency and they have to place those things and do those things, that affects the quality of death for the caregiver as well. So by having these conversations and knowing what's happening ahead of time, it avoids some of that emotional trauma that we can experience. So, my preference is that the dog is sedated in the exam room with their person present with them via an IM or intramuscular sedative. Now, those sedatives, I'm not a veterinarian, so the sedatives can vary in what they use and the dosage amount. And a lot of veterinarians are sensitive to if the dog has potentially cognitive issues or respiratory issues, different sedatives will make a different, will have a different experience for certain dogs, whether that will create more ataxia or for them to become dysmorphic or anything like that, where they might. The goal is the dog just goes to literally takes a nice nap in your arms.
Yeah.
But they can have reactions to those sedatives, and it's important that the vet makes you aware of, and this is where doulaing can help, where I can say, they might get a little dysmorphic and they might be waving their head around or, their tongue might hang out.
Well, they
And they're,
might gag. That's what happened with
yes,
Jasmine.
yes,
She had the sedative but the vet prepared us for that. But when she did, I mean, she was out of it, but when she did, I was like panicked. I was like, "Oh
yes,
my God. Oh my God."
yes.
And that was a horrific experience. She didn't know what was happening. I mean, I
Yes, and
don't
that's what
think.
I tell people is like they have no by the point that it's once that has taken hold, the dog is they've had their glass of wine and they are very peaceful mentally through it. It's just the physiological response that we might witness if we're prepared for it makes it a little bit easier, you
Okay.
know?
Yeah.
And then once the dog has gotten to a place where they're really, really peaceful, most of the time the vet will come in and they will allow you to hold the dog. Depending on the size of the dog, they may place the dog on a table or be on the floor. I usually will lay on the floor with the dogs or I'll be right by the dog's head. They will hold off on usually a rear vein, where they will then inject a high level of anesthesia, which will slow the heart and stop breathing and stop the heart rate. And that takes seconds, but then they usually will wait a few minutes, sometimes a couple of minutes, and they will listen to the heart rate. And once they tell you the heart rate has stopped, they will then say the dog has passed. Now, knowing what we know now about death. We used to say that the end of life came when the heart stopped beating. But we know now that brain activity can continue for quite some time afterwards. There's no specifics yet on that, but I purposely will stay with my animal after passing for sometimes upwards of a half an hour to 45 minutes. And I'll just talk. I'll be talking to the vet staff. I'll be talking to the dog. And I'm just making sure that their brain, no matter, I don't know what the timeline looks like, but they'll be hearing my voice through the whole process of everything shutting down. We tend to rush death quite frequently, and I've really started coaching people and saying you don't have to rush it. You can stay with them for a bit. We want to just get out of there, and research has shown that staying with them and allowing yourself to grieve through that for a little bit can make a big difference in cultures, even with human passing, where the body stays for some time, and it's only really in our culture where we're like, make it disappear as quickly as possible. And I've actually found, even with myself, that staying with them, and even with the horses, and when I talk about horse and companionship grieving, when we've euthanized horses, we will allow that horse to stay with the other senior horses for upwards of a whole afternoon. So they get their time to say goodbye before we remove the body. So there's no right or wrong, but I do tell people, like, you don't have to rush out. What you do have to prepare yourself for is the reflexes that will happen physiologically after the body has passed. There will be muscle spasms. There might be some defecation or urination. This is or normal, very normal stuff. You might see gasping or twitching. That is just the body's muscles relaxing.
Are you and your dog struggling with reactivity? You're not alone. At Positively, we've created a powerful new approach that will finally provide a lasting solution for your dog's reactivity. And it's available for you and your dog right now. Go to positively.com, click Take a Course, and find Help Stop Reactivity to enroll in this game-changing online course for you and your dog today. That's positively.com. And now, back to the podcast.
I'm so glad that you are very practical about it, because I think it is such an emotional thing to let your own animal go, to have somebody explain the process, I think is so valuable for all of us. And that's why the work you do, not just doing it yourself, but also helping others, is vital. So I was looking, I know, I know this already, but on your website, which is, by the way, olddogsgotohelen.com, you have courses that people can take. The Good
Yes.
Death for Senior and Hospice Dogs, and that's donation. The Good Death for Behavioral Euthanasia, and then you've also got Seniors for Adoption. So these courses, I know that you offer courses for professionals too.
Yes. So I do. We have Savoring the Sunset as well, which we've got to update for this year for those courses. But Savoring the Sunset, which is about prepping for having a senior dog, which I think you really want to tell my husband what aggravates me is we'll go into a pet store and they have the whole puppy section, right? Like, we're prepped for puppyhood, and seniors we just sort of wait until there is a problem before we're actively talking about supporting them through that senior life, or end stage. And I think, again, that comes from our culture of fear of death. As soon as we start talking about senior dogs, we're like, no, I don't want to talk about it, because that means that we're near the end of life. And that's not the case at all. Seniors can be seniors for years, but they might need support through that period. So we teach a course on that. The course on behavior euthanasia is talking about giving. Behavior euthanasia is a much more accepted topic now than it used to be. But unfortunately, we don't talk enough about facilitating good deaths for behavior euthanasia. What does death look like when you're dealing with an animal that has, if we go back to that high level of function, right? Their function is fine. We're not dealing with a dog that can't walk or is struggling to breathe. But their purpose is maladaptive, and we're struggling to give them that joy. How do we give them a good quality of death? And those questions to ask the vet and all of those things. So yes, those are courses for the public and professionals. And then I do a lot of, like I said, one-on-one coaching for professionals and shelters and rescues and all of that. I actually did a talk yesterday with Dogs Trust in the UK
Oh,
um,
yes.
on euthanasia for them. Yes, to
Okay, and
help
that
them with
that
those
actually was a
processes.
question for me, was, when you in the shelters. The shelter here, obviously, a lot of our shelters here, because there's such a massive pet overpopulation problem here, which we are trying to rectify, we're trying to change. But can animals have good deaths in the shelter?
Yes, they absolutely can, but we need to become more comfortable talking about death, preparing and having literally procedures for end of life. And if we do that, you will notice that the staff morale of shelters will go up, because most of the time, shelter staff, I mean, the ones that are the boots on the ground, we're talking those of us in the trenches that are doing this work every day, which I empathize with extensively. When they have or see an animal have a poor quality of death because it's not planned or it's rushed or it's done in the same medical room as we're doing the spays and the neuters, and everything's sort of just that quality of death affects the caregiver, which means that they push back on it more for the next time. And that is a snowball process. So the more that we talk about quality of death in shelters and we talk about giving that quality of death, we improve the morale of everybody in that circle, the caregivers, the management, the animals themselves. And that's what we're doing here at Old Dogs Go to Helen, and it's really difficult. It's, euthanasia is being present at 3 or 4 euthanasias a week for me is not something that it's like, oh, I love this. But I also know, again, what that alternative for that animal would have looked like.
What can shelters do then? What's the process that they can
That's
follow to give their dogs a better death?
so having a protocol in terms of, if we've made a decision that this dog needs, we're going to euthanize this dog, having a specific team of people that are very comfortable with death, that are understanding, that necessarily won't be what we were calling like desensitized, but are able to stretch that rubber band. Having that team be aware of what's happening and those dates set for euthanasia, and then incorporating joy into the time leading up to it. Let's fulfill that bucket list. Let's give these dogs their joy, their purpose in that period of time. Talking about pre-sedation for pre-sedation for pre-sedation, making sure that we're not dealing with dogs that are panicking or stressed or extremely fearful at the time, and having a protocol for that, even if that means delaying the euthanasia so that we can check and make sure that the pre-sedation that we do use is effective. There's nothing worse than doing that and then having the dog not respond well to it. We're doing it anyway, and it's miserable for everybody involved. And then having support and grief after the fact. So for me, with shelter dogs, and this is really important for me with hospice dogs, the dogs that come to me that are surrendered uh, in their most desperate hour, a 17-year-old dog that's
Mm.
been with someone for 17 years and is now placed with me, or dogs that are brought to the shelter and surrendered and then they end up with me. I may only have them for 2 weeks. I may only have them for a month. Same thing happens in shelters all the time. But what happens when we euthanize these dogs is that we're on to the next, right? What's coming in next? And we don't often, and the shelter staff don't often have the chance to truly honor and memorialize those dogs. At Old Dogs Go to Helen, we have memorials. So I have my big collar
Mm.
memorial. Every dog that passes, we take that collar off, we hang it on the memorial. We have rocks that we paint and we put them down at our memorial rock
Mm.
bridge. So we are still honoring that dog, even if we only knew them for 24 hours or 2 weeks, that they were here and they mattered. And we need to be doing that for shelter staff. We need to give them a tradition or a culture in memorializing those dogs so that they don't feel so disposed, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
that makes a huge difference in morale for the euthanasia process.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, I mean, we need to, like, spread you around everywhere, like, the whole world, okay? I'm just seeing this now. I've got, like, "Oh my god, okay. We need a blast. You need to be on 60 Minutes or, CBS Sunday Morning or, oh my gosh, okay." The last question I wanna ask you, look, we don't I mean, we want people to adopt older dogs, don't we, as well? We
Mhm.
don't want the senior dogs. There's so many senior dogs. I was filming in a shelter yesterday. There was this beautiful senior pitty who I just completely gravitated towards. I can't adopt her, but I just was like, "Oh my gosh, you have my heart." I adopted Bella when she was 11.
Mhm.
And she was with us for 5 years, such a joy, and I knew that even when she passed, I was like, "I gave this dog, who had a pretty difficult start in life, the best 5 years that I could possibly give her," and she was sunny, and she loved her walks, and she had sniffies, and we loved her. So, I am a big supporter of adopting the senior dog, and it is so joyful. I'm telling you, it is joyful. But there is also that other side that it can be quite expensive.
Mm.
How can we deal with that? Because we want more senior dogs. We don't want them to be overlooked in shelters. But how can we say and support people and go, it's okay. It's fine. I mean, it might cost you a bit, but like
Yes.
how do we do that?
Well, it's a great question. And I always tell people that most of the time it ends up being relative. Because if you take a puppy home or a young dog home, the cost that you will spend on supplies, training, potentially initial vet bills and all of that, if you round that up and then you look at usually like management care for a senior dog, if we're talking like a daily, pill for pain or, maybe a dental once every 2 years or whatever it is. Usually it rounds out. It might feel jarring at first, but if you prepare for it and you're planned for it, it won't sweep the rug out from under you. We also have to remember that you could go through the exact same thing with a young dog. You could adopt a 2-year-old dog that ends up having food allergies. Then you go through the same thing with them, but for longer. So it's a roll of the dice either way. What we have to try to be, which is difficult for us as a human species, is completely and totally, this is for them. It's not for me. When I bring these senior dogs home, I'm actively participating in breaking my own heart. I'm saying, I'm going to take this amazing, wonderful dog home. He's only going to have 2 weeks with me. I know my heart is going to be broken at the end of this, but that doesn't matter. What matters is what I'm giving him
Mm.
in that time. And listen, my credit card will be maxed out. I won't go on any good vacations, but I will know what I've given him. So it's I know that you can't always look at it financially that way. I think that there can absolutely be more programs to help support people adopting seniors,
Yes.
but that's also very difficult in today's day and age as well. And I won't go into the politics of financial instability in our world, but try to just perspectively look at, you're going to spend money on an animal no matter what. Um, and it's worth it for the seniors to go through that. And it's also worth it if you only have them for a short period of time. Like the people that say, "Oh, well, I could never do it because it would break my heart." And I say to them, it breaks mine. It breaks
Mm.
mine every
Yeah.
day. I get so attached and then I do all these things and then they pass, but it's worth it for them. You have to put yourself aside for it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm a huge advocate. So look, if you see that senior dog in the shelter, then they'll give you so much love.
So much
And I
back.
love the
So much
response that
back.
you said to that because I didn't even think of it like that. Yeah, I mean, okay, you might have this dog for a short amount of time, but if you're worried about the money thing and you're like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm gonna get a puppy." Well, okay, well, that's gonna cost you some too. So I really love that response. Helen, you are a delight. I mean, I knew you would be. thank you for
Oh, you're so welcome.
just doing the work you do and for also now educating other people. So if people want to find out more about you, is the place olddogsgotohelen.com the best place to go?
Yes. And also No Monkey Business Dog Training. Both of those places you will find me. If you're interested in consulting about end-of-life care, really go through No Monkey Business. But either way, you're going to find me. So
yeah, because we can't forget, I mean, as you said, you are a dog trainer. So you are doing that too. Oh my gosh, you are so busy.
But it's wonderful. I will be honest with you, it keeps so much in perspective when people are complaining about their younger dog doing things, and I'm on the other side of it here at the end, especially with hospice puppies. It's like healthy, mischievous, naughty dogs. Enjoy it. Don't take it for granted. It's a privilege to have that at that stage. So it really does give me some perspective sometimes when in working with those young dogs.
Thank you, Helen, so much for joining us.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
I knew that this was going to be an amazing podcast, everybody, and I really hope that you gained a lot of information. It's a tough subject to talk about, but Helen makes it so much easier. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again on another podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to Victoria Stilwell's Positively podcast. For Victoria's online dog training courses, more information, and helpful dog training tips, visit Victoria's official website at positively.com. Get connected on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media as Victoria Stilwell. Learn to become a professional dog trainer with the Victoria Stilwell Academy at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. And be sure to tune in next time as Victoria helps you and your dog live your best life together. Positively.
Are you confused by all the conflicting dog training info flying around the internet? Tired of hearing about compromises that don't consider the dog's overall wellness? Looking for more than just how to teach dogs to do or not do something? If you feel like there must be more to dog training than the same old tired arguments about tools and methods, you're right. No matter your background, discover an inclusive community designed to go beyond traditional dog training and develop what you need to live your best life with your dog at positively.com. Accounts are completely free to set up, and you'll find countless pages, videos, and courses to level up not just your skills and knowledge, but also how you think about living your best life with your dog. Visit us now at positively.com. That's positively.com. And now, back to the podcast.